Friends, it's the start of a brand new holiday shopping season as well as the launch of the next generation of consoles. And a lot of you may have been looking into upgrading a TV. And I did a video on what I believe was the best value 4K 120Hz TV that you can get on the market right now, which is this LG 49 Nano 85. It has all the bells and whistles that you're expecting, which includes 4K 120Hz support as well as HDMI 2.1. But there's been this nagging question at the back of my mind. Is OLED worth it? Is that next leap in not just having the resolution and refresh rate, but actually the display technology really where it needs to be, that it should be something you should be considering? We're gonna answer that after I tell you about today's video sponsor. My friends, today's video is brought to you by the chair that I am sitting on. This is the eWin Flash XL gaming chair. It's ergonomic, it's got pillows, and it is XL, as they say. It can hold up to 550 pounds for its max load, which is just bananas. It's called the XL because if you compare it to the previous eWin chair that they sponsored us with, it is just large. My goodness, this is great for anybody who needs some extra width when they sit in a chair, which I personally prefer because it gives me room to kind of slide around, or again, it has that max weight capacity in case you need it over standard gaming chairs. And on top of that, it's got all the features you would expect in a gaming chair, and it's super duper comfy with their cold cure foam, which is 2 times heavier than regular foam per cubic foot, which gets it close to memory foam territory. eWin makes some of my favorite comfy gaming chairs. It's got all of the adjustments that you can need for leaning back, as well as for adjusting the armrest. They've got large, durable, soft glide casters that make hardly a noise when you slide around on the floor and will also not damage the surface beneath the chair. So go ahead and check out the link in the video description, and you can use coupon code UFD to save 30% off for the month of November on the Flash XL. It's a large chair, it's large in my heart, and you can save a large discount, 30% off using code UFD. Check them out. So I have been skeptical of OLED for a little while for several different reasons. Number one, it's the price. This LG 48CX is actually starting at about $1,450 right now with sales going on. It's roughly $1,500 new, but the best value OLED you can get from LG is the 55-inch, which I believe is going for right around $1,300. That's in stark comparison to this 49 Nano 85, which went for about $600. So there's a $700 to $900 price jump to get the same technical specs as far as 4K support, 120 Hz refresh rate, as well as just entry-level HDR, but OLED obviously has a feature set that goes above and beyond that. And whether or not that $700 to $900 price difference is going to be worth it is absolutely going to be a personal preference thing. However, I can say from the first time that I booted up these displays side by side, I could tell immediately that the OLED was clearly the best choice to go with for next generation. Even in my initial unboxing of this monitor, when I just got a first look with no comparisons, I could tell that this was producing something similar. The best analogy that I can come up with is when you go from having a brand new Toyota Camry, which is obviously a really good car, it's something that's of value, it has all of the features that you necessarily need it to have for a car, and it's not bad. But then you get in a Tesla, and then you realize that there are features that you've been missing out. There's a fundamental restructuring of how a car experience should be in a Tesla versus a Camry that brings it to a whole nother level. Or comparing it to a situation that I recently had, it's like listening to high-end audio equipment for the first time. You hear the same songs that you've heard growing up over and over, but with breathtaking new clarity, new sounds that you didn't know were there, but make sense in the context of what you remember from your childhood. And that's honestly, at a fundamental level, what OLED brings to the table. The images look exactly the same. Spider-Man is gonna perform exactly the same because it's running on the PS5. But as you can even see in this game that I'm showing you right now, there are visual differences that are key. Number one, obviously, the OLED is a little bit brighter. It has a higher brightness level, but that's not the entire story. So one of the reasons why OLED is a great technology is because each of the pixels that is in an OLED television illuminates himself. Whereas with an LED TV, they have backlights, which means that part of the panel is dedicated to actually producing the light that you're seeing on the screen, which number one leads to extra bulk. OLED panels are actually quite thin, but then number two leads to light bleed, which is something that you won't notice this unless you see something without it. You can see it here as I'm loading up Final Fantasy 15, the clear black that's happening on the OLED. The infinite contrast ratio of pure black to white allows you to get a more distinguished image. One of the ways that LED manufacturers try to get around this is by the fact that they introduce multiple backlight zones, which allow them to cut down some of the light bleed that happens on certain portions. So this is something that you'll see on higher end TVs, where when there's a piece of white text on the screen, you'll only notice that portions of the screen are illuminated. However, on an OLED display, when there's white text on a black background, you only have the white text illuminated. A standard television is clearly good enough. You can see everything that was intended by Insomniac Games for you to see with Spider-Man. Now, I kind of want to demonstrate this to you guys in a little bit of a different way, because honestly, the difference comes down to the details. There is more information being presented on the OLED screen versus the LED screen, simply because you lose a lot of information on the backlight. So for this shot, I turned off all of the lights in my office and only had the TVs showing through. And then from there, I upped the ISO value on my camera, which essentially just illuminates or gives a greater exposure to the image. And there we can see whether or not we're losing any details. And even in bright scenes, we're losing less detail on the OLED than we are on the LED. But the real difference comes in places where you're in the shadows, such as where I am at right now in Spider-Man Miles Morales. It is nighttime, and sometimes you get up in the shadows, like right here. You can clearly see on both of these that Spider-Man is there. However, when you crank up the ISO in the camera, what you'll find is that there is significantly more detail that is retained on the OLED because you're not being washed out by the backlight on the LED TV. That LED TV ends up getting rid of some of the suit detail. It ends up getting rid of some of the environmental detail simply because the light is too bright to allow you to see what's happening on the panel. And you can absolutely notice it in a darker environment. Currently, right now, as I'm filming with all the lights on in my studio, it's really hard to tell the difference. But I promise you, when you're playing at night, you don't have the lights on, you're going to immediately see a clarity detail on the OLED TV. And then this just comes with added benefits. Having local dimming on an LED creates this weird effect, a halo effect around certain portions that are illuminated, and it just can become annoying sometimes to the point where a lot of people are driven to even turn it off, and you're not going to have that on the OLED. But the difference between these two televisions isn't just down to the detail that you're going to see in darkness, it's actually color reproduction as well. For being in the same, I guess, class of product. This is a 49-inch 4K 120Hz TV. This is a 48-inch 4K 120Hz TV, both from LG, both running the same operating system. That $800 difference that you're seeing is not just to give you greater clarity, but also the colors are just more accurate to what you would expect if you were playing it on a color accurate monitor. And it's not just oversaturation. It actually looks like everything is properly lit. Everything looks as if that's the way the creator intended for you to be experiencing it, which is something that actually can't be shown in those storerooms that you see in Best Buy, where they're playing these giant oversaturated images that try to make everything look bright and poppy and as best as you could possibly see it, so that you go home and you take it out and you're then disappointed with what you get. But just the side-by-side comparison. The blues on the OLED TV are just richer and fuller and more what I would expect a sky to look like. The greens in Final Fantasy 15 on the ground are just more what I would expect dehydrated grass to look like. Even the dang PlayStation home menu has a different shade of gray that is more just pleasing. It looks as though that's how I'm supposed to be seeing it compared to the LED TV. Now, obviously that comes with the cost. You expect to get a better panel when you are paying more. So a higher end LED TV might do a better job of getting that color reproduction. But since this is the cheapest OLED that you can get, and this is the cheapest 4K 120 TV you can get, it makes a lot of sense to compare them just based on those values. Now, one of the other worries that comes with OLED TVs is the idea of screen burn-in, which is essentially if you have a static image that is currently on your screen, the OLED, because it permanently displays that and nothing else, nothing's actually changing on those pixels, it will stay there permanently. We've seen this happen with previous OLED displays on phones and the like, and previous OLED TVs. However, that's something that there's been a lot of steps made in order to prevent. There's several different things that you can do in order to prevent this. Number one, namely turn down the brightness or use less bright scenes on your television television, instead of using vivid mode, just use natural mode or something like that, or just drop the backlight so that you don't have it blaring, which is going to burn it into the pixel. But then on top of that, most companies have introduced something of a pixel shifting technology, which is they'll just ever so slightly move the pixels around on the screen so that it's not the same static image that's being presented, and therefore you're not necessarily likely to get that burn in because it's not there. And then LG and other TV manufacturers have introduced screen refreshing, which just allows the TV to kind of reset in case you notice any stuck pixels. LG automatically reminds you to do it every 2,000 hours, or you can do it manually in case you notice, but they also have a daily pixel refresher, which will automatically operate when users turn off the TV after watching it for more than 4 hours in total. So there's a lot of prevention that's going in there, but LG also has one more thing that they do in order to prevent burn-in on your OLED TV. It's something called logo luminance adjustment, which if it detects a static image on the screen, it will just ever so slightly start decreasing the brightness of that logo until it's more appropriate. They say it would be about 20% dimmer after everything is said and done, just to help prevent the burn-in. And the reason this is the main concern that you see with televisions as opposed to phones, which have OLED displays, is because of the life cycle of a TV versus a phone. A phone's typically replaced every 2 to 4 years, whereas a television is held on to for much longer. So companies continually are coming out with new ways to allow it so that you won't see long-term effects of burn-in on OLED. And obviously, there's new technology that's coming out, such as micro LED, that will give you the benefits of OLED because each pixel will have its own backlight versus having just giant arrays of backlight. But that technology is not here now, and this isn't a video kind of covering the scope as to whether or not you should wait for it. It's really just about traditional LED versus OLED at this point. And personally, after having them side by side, after opening the OLED for the first time and experiencing it for myself, because obviously they've been out for a while and I've just been wondering to myself, and especially with the launch of the new consoles, I honestly don't think that I can go back. And it's essentially the same argument as the metaphor that I made. Once you have what you know the future should look like, it's really difficult to go back to what it was. Going back to a Camry after you've driven in a Tesla, except for the whole, range anxiety thing and maybe the right to repair, striking those out, it's really difficult. Or after owning a decent pair of headphones and then going back to something you picked up at the dollar store because it just works, you immediately notice the quality difference. It's only after comparison that you can see what you've been missing this entire time. The level of detail and clarity that wasn't there before. The fact that you now know that you shouldn't have giant gray spots around text when it's an actually black screen provides just an experience that honestly, I didn't know what was missing until I tried it. And yes, that price tag is steep. That $700 to $900 difference between an LED TV and an OLED, at least at the lower end level. Once you start getting into like the 75-inch 8Ks, and that's $30,000 versus the $4,000 that it's an 8K regular one. But outside of that, just at the base 48CX versus the 49 Nano 85 or even the 55CX, I would say if this is going to be your long-term television purchase, if you're not planning on upgrading for the next 5 to 7 years, save up for OLED. It makes a whole lot of sense. It's double the price, but you do get a much enhanced experience on the OLED TVs that honestly can't be dismissed, but also can't be quite expressed or shown to you unless you see it for yourself. So yes, go down to the local Best Buy or electronics store and see the OLED TVs on display, but know that you're not really getting the full side-by-side picture there because those are handcrafted. But after seeing them just essentially mirroring the displays, I can confidently say that I never want to go back to my Nano 85. It's just not something that I want to choose to do. So if you have the opportunity and you're not going to be put out by saving up for that $1,300 to $1,500 TV, OLED's definitely the way to go. But just like a Toyota Camry, there's nothing wrong with getting the 49 Nano 85, right? Like it works. It does everything that you need it to do. It doesn't have the greatest HDR, but it runs 4K 120 Hertz. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with this high-end television. It's just a different experience on the OLED. But that's gonna wrap up this video. That is my interpretation of whether or not OLED or LED should be your choice, especially for next-gen gaming, now that it is here with the Series X, the PS5, the new AMD and NVIDIA graphics cards. There are new experiences to be had all around, but fundamentally, at the end of the day, the real honest truth is that you should just enjoy what you buy. Don't let this video of me talking about OLED versus LED make you feel bad for picking up anything from LED. And it's the same when it comes to the PS5 versus the Series X versus PC. Are you enjoying what you have? Good. That's what we should be doing with our technology. This is entertainment. This is something that if you can feel confident that you made the right choice by saving that $700 and investing it elsewhere because entertainment's not such a big value for you, great. I love that. That's what I want you to do. I want you to enjoy your technology. OLED is how I'm gonna enjoy my games from now on, and I'm gonna do so with today's video sponsor. Don't forget that today's video is brought to you by eWin's Flash XL gaming chair. It's still down from before. Check it out at the link in the video description. Use coupon code UFD to save 30% off. And that's gonna wrap up this video. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech related content here on UFD Tech. I'm Brett. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.